Okay, so you're a skeptic of religion, Christianity in particular, because you've heard the Jesus story was made up of different ancient myths, and therefore maybe they're all true, maybe none of them are true. Yeah? All right, let's talk about the authentic Jesus story. In a 2007 documentary, Zeitgeist, uh, it was claimed in the beginning of that film that the Christian church took stories from pagan myths and created the Jesus myth. In 2008, Bill Maher released his mockumentary Religulous, which used many of the same claims. When dealing with Christianity, we see this come up all the time. Each Christmas and Easter, many of these same claims pop up. The virgin birth, resurrection, having 12 disciples, and being a miracle worker were all taken from pagan myths, with examples being Mithras and Horus, Osiris, Attis, many others, supposedly boasting of virgin births, death and resurrection, having disciples, and being miracle workers. Therefore, the church has covered up these connections and then labeled the Gnostics heretics. Therefore, Jesus is not that special. Well, the issue is that these are mostly or completely false. Edward Winston of skepticproject.com confirmed that Zeitgeist was based largely on books of questionable sourcing, especially using Akaria S's The Christ Conspiracy, a book that holds the claim that you become what you were raised to be. So a Christian if you were raised in a Christian home, a Buddhist if in a Christian or a Buddhist home, etc. And it's a claim that Maher also repeated in his movie, which does beg the question how so many atheists came from religious homes and vice versa. Anyway, her book and many others seem to be influenced mostly by the 1890 book The Golden Bough by James Frazer, of which Winston and most scholars say is a gross misrepresentation of facts and research. As Mark Strauss pointed out in his book Four Portraits, One Jesus, this virgin birth is unlike other mythologies. Because unlike God's coming to impregnate women with a physical body, the Holy Spirit caused Mary to become pregnant and have a normal birth. Ian Wishart researched multiple sources to show that none of the other gods had true virgin births, if they even had a traditional birth. And in terms of death and resurrection, only one comes close from before the time of Christ. And that's Osiris, who was chopped up into 14 pieces and reassembled, becoming the god of the underworld. With all the other supposed resurrection stories appearing after AD 150, others who went to the underworld either had not died first or were rescued by others, and they were not killed to take on the sins of others. Whether the stories came from 150 years after Christ, or 150 years ago, or even yesterday, there is no other story like that of Jesus. The Jewish believers would not accept a paganized story, and both Jews and pagans alike would have disregarded a physical resurrection in this current world, if at all, as William Lane Craig has argued. It must be known and remembered that God gave Mary the choice to carry his son, as we see in Luke chapter 1. The resurrected Jesus was witnessed by not just the 12 apostles, okay, technically 11 after Judas Iscariot killed himself, but as shown in 1 Corinthians 15, 3 through 9, he was also witnessed by over 500 people, including his brothers, women, and the first major persecutor of the church, Paul himself. As Paul stated in verse 6, most of them were still alive when he wrote 1 Corinthians, though some had been martyred. He and Luke, especially as seen in Luke and Acts, gave historical facts that could be checked out. So this is going to be a no to modern skepticism and religious pluralism. because Jesus was not an amalgam of ancient myths that were stolen by people hoping to get rich and famous. Most myths stole from the gospel, and the early Christians used history, evidence, and eyewitnesses to back up their claims. We can discuss each of those and other topics, but the story of Jesus is unique and even the inspiration for other stories. There is enough historical evidence to know that Jesus not only lived, but that his claims to be the Son of God who takes away the sins of the world and has died, risen again, and now sits at the right hand of the Father in heaven can be trusted. Maybe next time we can talk more about the Trinity. But we can trust that the story of Jesus is unique, that it is true. Do you think you can believe that?